So I have an observation and a question. And the observation is just adding a few points to what was discussed by Ajit and Radha.
Right.
In Jammu and Kashmir right now, which is facing the brunt of this challenge,
Right.
what has happened is that there is a lot of popular sentiment against the Rohingyas. But unfortunately, I mean, Dogras, they're supposed to be a martial,
Right.
very aggressive sort of community.
Right.
And yet they haven't been able to do anything about it.
Right.
And that is only because Jammu, the urban Jammu, has been encircled and demographic inversion has already happened.
So it's almost like Naukari.
Yes, and so they know that if something happens, then
They'll be outnumbered.
yeah, they'll be outnumbered and they'll be massacred.
Right.
So that is something that that is common knowledge
Right.
among the people who are actually facing the brunt of this issue. Secondly, I mean, my question is that ever since we've this media has taken up the issue of Rohingyas and it's been all over the news, we've heard really bad arguments from the other side.
Correct.
It's difficult to even imagine how this case is even sustained in the courts.
Correct.
Could you just summarize what, according to you, are the best arguments from the other side? Because I mean, even from your talk here, it's
Their best arguments are.
I don't gather anything which is worthwhile or which is worth spending your
Right.
thinking over.
Right. So the best arguments are, and to build on what he said, and I think he was genuinely playing just a devil's advocate. How can you prove that all 40,000 are terrorists? That's the factual argument that they try to push. Second, that there are principles of customary international law that apply to us, and their principle has always been that India has endorsed the principle of non-refoulement in several platforms, in several congregations. How can it choose to not apply that particular principle as far as this particular situation is concerned? That's what they're citing. And from what I remember of Mr. Fali Nariman's arguments in the Supreme Court, he also cited a certain New York Convention, wherein he says that we are a signatory to that particular convention, notwithstanding the fact that we are not signatories to the Convention of 1951 or the Protocol of 1967. This convention still makes it obligatory for us to respect these aspects. That's basically his argument. Now, the one thing that you need to know on an international law perspective or even an Indian law perspective is this. No international instrument under Indian law attains the status of law until it becomes a part of a national statute. That is, it translates to some kind of a domestic legislation pursuant to your international obligation. But that is only with respect to an instrument. That is only with respect to a specific document. What if it is customary international law? Because customary law doesn't exist on paper. It is a matter of practice. It's a matter of custom. Can you evade your responsibilities under customary international law is the specific issue that you need to address. And here, I will fall back on facts as opposed to law, because I am not evading the responsibility, because I am not asking them to be pushed back to Myanmar. I am asking them to be sent back to Bangladesh, and I am willing to do everything that is needed to give them the resources. At the same time, I am not wrong in also asking them for them to be sent back to Myanmar if I can convince the Myanmar government and I can put some kind of a mechanism in place that holds the Myanmar government responsible and answerable for the safety of this particular community. The thing is this, my suspicion is that sometimes somebody decides to play a victim when he realizes that he is losing a battle. Okay? That's the same of what LTTE did as well. Okay? My heart is in the right place as far as Sri Lankan Tamils are concerned, because I think they have faced immense aggression ever since the 1983 riots. There is no doubting it. But at the same time, they themselves were living in the fear of LTTE for a very long time. Okay? So when LTTE realized that the Sri Lankan army was not going to let go of this fight anymore, and it's going to come after them hammer and tongs, they decided to play the victim. And therefore, they decided to activate people across the world, living in Canada, in United Kingdom and everywhere else, who decided to give the distinct impression that these people were mass murderers, rapists and not. I'm not denying the fact that it may have happened, but there is also a sense of exaggeration that may have happened as far as that is concerned. Similarly, in this case, whether these people are truly victims, because if you're really looking at facts and you want me to prove that not all of them are terrorists, I want you to prove that all of them are victims. I'd like to see if you're able to prove that all 40,000 people are really victims. How do you not know that they're actually facing the backlash for what they have done or may have done to Buddhists and Hindus living in Arakan? How do you not know this? Perhaps they are facing this because this bottled up frustration of constantly being bullied has now resulted in a retaliation from the Buddhists of that particular country. And when they decide perhaps to come to India, because Buddhists may actually retaliate, we don't. So that's one of the reasons that they find India safer than Burma. So my question is, for you to apply the principle of non-refoulement and say that India has to respect it, you need to prove two things. That all of them are coming from Myanmar. Because all of them are coming from Myanmar, then perhaps the principle of non-refoulement applies and therefore you can call them a refugee. But if you're coming from Bangladesh, you're actually an illegal immigrant who's come for a better economic opportunity. Therefore, I have every right to kick you out. I will use the word kick you out because you're an illegal immigrant. Now the question is, how many of them are illegal immigrants and how many of them are refugees? Are you able to prove that these are the number of illegal refugees and illegal immigrants? You don't know. Then what burden are you casting on me? If I don't recognize the concept of a refugee as far as my country is concerned, except for a standard operating procedure, the more concrete position is that of an illegal immigrant under the Foreigners Act. I'm entitled to invoke that particular provision. So who's on a flimsier legal footing and a factual footing? It's you. The one who is actually trying to make the case for Rohingyas. And which is why I keep saying, when you take these kind of stupid positions, the box in which you pitch yourself gets narrower and narrower. Your room for maneuver is closing because facts are coming out. Graves are literally being dug up and metaphorically being dug up as far as your facts are concerned, as far as your position is concerned. Which is why I think, as opposed to allowing yourselves to be pushed in a corner with this sentimental argument, are you not creating animosity against a particular community? Are you not being heartless? Don't you have a heart? Don't you bleed? Patthar ke bane ho kya, and all this kind of nonsense. But these are the facts. I may not have a heart, but do you have a brain and eyes? That's my question.
What's the